chandelier shimmered above me, its light bouncing off champagne flutes and sequined gowns as laughter rang through the ballroom like an echo of judgment. I stood near the entrance, clutching the simple bouquet I'd brought as a gift, painfully aware of how out of place I looked in my $40 clearance rack dress. But I was there for my sister, Claire, her engagement night, her moment. Even if I wasn't worthy in my family's eyes. Then it happened. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My mother, Lorraine Carson, designer heels, pearl necklace, perfectly cold, walked straight up to me, her jaw clenched. "Why are you even here?" she hissed through a smile. "I told you to help the caterers in the back." "Mom," I whispered, my voice steady. "I was invited by Claire." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. She raised her hand. The slap cracked louder than the jazz band playing near the open bar. My face stung. My heart didn't flinch. "You'll never be more than a maid," she screamed, loud enough for everyone to hear. I stared at her, blinking slowly. Around us, the guests gasped, laughed, whispered. I saw my Aunt Jo cover her mouth. My uncle smirked. And Claire looked away.
I didn't cry. I didn't yell.
I just straightened my shoulders and said softly, "You'll regret this." Then the ballroom doors opened, and in walked Asher Blake, sharp suit, darker eyes, and the kind of commanding presence that made everyone pause mid-breath. The air thickened. Murmurs rose. Heads turned. My mother's lips parted, confusion curling into unease. "Who is?" Asher's voice cut through the room like a dagger dipped in velvet. "Where's my fiancé?" Every person turned to me. "She owns this place," he said, loud and clear. "Now, should we begin the real party?"
Gasps.
Silence. Then chaos. I didn't flinch, because finally they saw me, and they had no idea how deep the story went. The silence in the room wasn't quiet. It was shattered, like the sound after a glass hits marble. My mother stood frozen, her hand still slightly raised from the slap. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled, and for once in my life, she looked small. Asher's presence filled the space like a storm. The man didn't just walk, he owned every step. Broad-shouldered in a tailored navy suit, his watch alone could have paid for the chandeliers above us. But it wasn't the money that made people tremble. It was the power in his voice, and the way his eyes locked on mine like I was the only person that mattered in the room. He reached out and took my hand, as if we'd always belonged like that, in front of everyone who once looked through me like I was invisible. "My fiancé," he said again, louder now. "This woman is the future Mrs. Blake. And from this moment on, anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." My Uncle Ross dropped his glass. "Claire's fiancé, Ethan, the same one who once told me I should date someone my level," visibly paled. My father stepped forward, trying to puff his chest out like the corporate big shot he once was before the last of his stocks fell flat. "You're engaged to her?" he scoffed. "You must be joking." Asher didn't blink. "Does this look like a man who jokes, Mr. Carson?" I'd never seen my father's face change that fast. His jaw clenched. I think in that moment he realized something. Something terrifying. He had no power anymore. Because I wasn't the maid. I was the woman who'd been quietly investing for the last 4 years, stacking paychecks, coding freelance at night, launching a startup from the back room of a bakery while this entire family laughed at me. And now, that startup had been acquired by Asher's firm for $14 million. I wasn't there as a guest. I was co-hosting this engagement party. Because I owned the venue. I turned slowly to my mother, her face pale beneath her flawless makeup. "I asked you for support. For love. For the tiniest shred of kindness." She said nothing. "But you raised me like a servant," I continued. "So now, enjoy being a guest in a house your daughter owns." Then I looked at Claire, and I saw something I didn't expect.
Fear.
Asher squeezed my hand. "Let's dance, Miss Carson." "Blake," I corrected softly, smiling for the first time that night. Soon to be Blake. And as he pulled me onto the ballroom floor, and the guests reluctantly made space, I knew something for certain. This wasn't revenge. This was the beginning of an empire, built in silence, seen by none, feared by all. The room pulsed with a quiet, nervous energy. Somewhere, the jazz band fumbled to find their rhythm again, but the crowd no longer cared about music. They weren't watching the performance, they were watching the shift. The invisible axis on which this entire evening had spun had just snapped, and now the balance of power tilted toward me. Asher's hand rested at the small of my back as we danced slowly, his presence grounding me, anchoring me through the aftershocks of humiliation and revelation. Around us, every pair of eyes followed, some wide with disbelief, others narrowed with envy. My mother hadn't moved. Claire had stepped off to the side, whispering harshly to Ethan, who looked as though he'd seen a ghost. I caught phrases. She lied to all of us. She's nothing. She's just playing him. How is this even possible? I leaned into Asher's shoulder just enough to whisper, "They're panicking." He chuckled softly. "Good.
They should be."
A voice rang out suddenly, sharp, breaking through the murmurs. "You can't be serious about marrying her," Claire barked, her cheeks flushed and her perfectly styled curls trembling from the shake of her rage. "She's been scrubbing toilets since high school." A few people gasped at the cruelty in her tone. A few nodded along. The rest waited, hungry for another blow, hungry to see me fall again. But Asher turned slowly, keeping me by his side. "You must be Claire," he said. "The sister who spent half a decade spending her fiancé's money and your father's reputation. That's right, isn't it? Ethan funded your cosmetic business, and your dad covered the debt when it failed." Claire's lips parted. She hadn't expected that. "I looked into the family before I proposed," he continued, calm but cutting. "I wanted to understand where she came from. I didn't find support. I found opportunists.
Parasites.
Don't talk about my family like that." Claire snapped. "I'm not talking about family. I'm talking about people who sold her dignity for social appearances." I stepped forward, releasing Asher's hand, my heart thudding, but not from fear. From clarity. The fog of years of manipulation and quiet belittling had cleared. "Claire," I said softly, "do you remember when I was 14 and you told your friends at school I was the housemaid's daughter?" She looked stunned. "That was years ago. It was just a joke. You locked me in the laundry room so I wouldn't embarrass you at your sweet 16. Was that a joke too?" Claire didn't answer. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling with venom. "So, what? You're rich now? You think that makes you something?" "No," I said, turning toward her fully. "What makes me something is that I survived you. I worked while you mocked me. I studied while you called me worthless. I built something from the ground up while you laughed at me for carrying trays and wiping counters. I made you strong," she hissed. "You should be thanking me." "No," I whispered. "You didn't make me strong. You tried to break me. That's not the same thing." The air grew heavy. You could feel the weight of it pressing on every chest in the room. Then Asher stepped in again, pulling out an envelope from his jacket. "And for those of you still wondering if this is a joke," he said, "here's a copy of the acquisition deal signed by our board last Friday. Her company is now part of Blake Enterprises. And per our partnership agreement, she now sits on the board. She owns majority shares in 3 of our subsidiaries." He handed the envelope to my father. My father didn't even open it. He just sank into a chair, like the wind had been knocked out of him. That man, once towering with arrogance and ambition, was now nothing more than a wilted shadow of his former self. Because he knew every cruel word, every cold shoulder, every time he called me less than, it had all come home to roost. "I just don't understand," my mother muttered. "You were never supposed to win." I looked at her for a long moment, and then said, "That's because you never thought I was playing the same game." Asher extended his hand again. I took it. We walked back through the crowd as it parted like the Red Sea, people unsure whether to clap or cower. And as we approached the balcony doors, I paused, turned to them one last time. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is just me standing. And with that, I walked out into the night air. But the story wasn't over yet. Because what came next would change everything they thought they knew about me and themselves. The cool night air kissed my skin as Asher and I stepped onto the terrace. The ballroom lights flickered behind us like the last gasps of a fire trying to stay alive, but inside, that fire was dying. I had taken back my voice, my place, and the illusion they'd clung to for years, that I would always be beneath them, had crumbled in seconds. But what they didn't know was that I had more to say. Asher turned to me, his brow furrowed. "You okay?" "I will be," I said softly. "But there's something I need to do first." I stepped back inside. The crowd was still murmuring, stunned, no music playing now. It was as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting. I walked slowly toward the raised platform where the band had once performed. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. "Excuse me," I said, my voice loud, clear, firm. "If I could have just a moment." The crowd stilled. I took the mic from the stunned pianist and stood in front of them. Not as the girl who once waited tables, not as the invisible sister, not as the maid, but as me. Fully. "You all know me as Claire's sister," I began, eyes scanning faces. "But most of you never actually saw me."
Not really.
And that was fine. I didn't need your approval. But tonight I realized something. Silence allows rot to grow. So let me speak. There were whispers. People shifted. But no one interrupted. My mother told me I would never be more than a maid. My sister locked me in closets so I wouldn't ruin her image. My father said I wasn't polished enough to sit with the guests.
And all of you stood by and laughed.
Maybe you didn't throw the stones, but you watched me bleed. Claire snapped. "Oh, please, this is just you seeking attention." I turned to her, calm. "You think attention is what I want?"
No.
"I want truth." I took a breath. "Claire, do you want to tell everyone what happened to Nana's trust fund?" Her face turned white. I continued, "Or should I explain how you forged her signature to cover your business loan when your boutique failed? How you begged me to stay quiet and promised you'd make it up to me? And how Mom and Dad covered it up when I threatened to go to the police?" Gasps erupted. Claire stammered, That's a lie." I pulled out the flash drive from my clutch. "Audio file. Your voice. You crying, saying you didn't mean to lie. I've kept it for 3 years." Her knees buckled. "I stayed quiet to protect you," I said. "Even after everything. But you all never changed. You just hid your venom behind crystal glasses and designer gowns. So here's the truth. I didn't come tonight to ruin this engagement." I turned to Ethan. "I came to free it." His eyes darted toward Claire. "Is this true?" Claire didn't answer. So Ethan walked off the stage, without her. She collapsed into a chair, her hand over her mouth, mascara streaking down. My mother rushed forward, trying to grab the mic. "You're destroying this family." "No," I said calmly. "I'm rebuilding it with honesty and without you." I dropped the mic, not out of drama, but out of finality. I was done explaining myself. Done shrinking. Asher was waiting by the exit. I walked toward him, but not before one last glance at my father, who now looked at me not with hate or anger, but with regret. I didn't need an apology. I already had peace. And as Asher and I stepped into the waiting black car outside, I realized something. They spent their whole lives trying to erase me, but they never realized I was the author of the next chapter, and it was just getting started. The next morning, the headlines did what I never needed my family to do. They told the truth. Engagement party turns into bombshell scandal. Heiress exposed. Sister emerges as billionaire powerhouse. Carson family in crisis. Former maid now holds all the cards. Who is Eleanor Carson? Meet the woman who shook the social elite overnight. The world now knew what my family had spent years trying to suppress. I sat on the terrace of Asher's Manhattan penthouse, the skyline glittering around us like a kingdom made of light. My phone buzzed with 100 messages, reporters, investors, socialites suddenly remembering my name. But I wasn't interested in noise. Asher walked out holding 2 mugs. Hazelnut oat milk latte for the CEO who broke the internet, he said with a soft grin. I took it with a grateful smile. You saw the articles?
He sat beside me.
Saw them? You broke them. Every outlet's calling you the new face of female entrepreneurship. And let's not pretend they aren't obsessed with the fact that you quietly helped fund 3 women's shelters last year, while they all called you a nobody. I stared out at the horizon. It still doesn't feel real. Asher leaned closer. You didn't just survive, Ellie. You rewrote the rules. You gave every girl who's ever been told she wasn't enough a reason to stand up. That's when my phone rang. The caller ID said Claire. I hesitated. Answer it, Asher said gently. Closure matters.
I did.
Eleanor. Claire's voice cracked. I don't even know where to begin. I let her sit in silence for a few seconds before replying. Try the truth. I messed up. I was jealous. I was cruel. I thought if I made you smaller, I'd feel bigger. But all I did was lose the one person who ever actually loved me without condition. She was crying now. I don't want your forgiveness, she said. I just needed to say I'm sorry. A pause. My heartbeat slowed. I believe you, I replied quietly. And I hope someday you believe in yourself enough not to need to destroy others to feel worthy.
She wept.
I didn't. I'd already cried enough tears for the both of us. Later that afternoon, I returned to the ballroom, my ballroom, for a press conference. Clean, professional, but not cold. Asher stood behind me in silent support, but I was the one who faced the lights. Good morning, I began. Many of you know me as the woman whose family tried to keep her in the shadows. But today, I stand in the light, not because I needed to be seen, but because I earned this place. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to inspire the ones who think they'll never rise. You will.
Quietly.
Powerfully. Relentlessly. And when you do, I looked straight into the cameras. They won't see it coming. And they won't be able to stop it. That night, I walked back into that empty ballroom. The same one where I'd been slapped. Shamed.
Dismissed.
I stood exactly where it had happened. And I whispered to the silence. I forgive you. All of you. But I'll never be you. Asher joined me. You sure you're ready for what's next? I turned to him, a fire behind my eyes that wasn't there before. I was born ready. They just never bothered to look close enough to see it. And as we walked out of that once cold palace of shame, the city opened itself up to me. Not as a maid. Not as the quiet sister. Not as someone to mock. But